heading into the weekend, we heard that the Bulls could have a planned pursuit of Jonathan Kuminga in store this offseason. When you pair that with the rumors that we already know the Bulls are going to be expecting to shop Nikola Vucevic, kind of made those rumors go hand in hand. Well, according to Joe Cowley, there's also going to be another Chicago Bulls big man that's also on the trade block, which I think is interesting. We're going to talk a little bit about that. And we're going to talk about the other prospects, trade prospects that the Chicago Bulls have on the trade market. We'll get into all that and more right after this. What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host there, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that being said, let's go and get into this content for today, y'all. So we're going to start off with this. This one's coming from Joe Cowley of the Chicago Sun-Times, which mentions that the Bulls could have multiple big men on the trade block this upcoming offseason. We already know about Nikola Vucevic. We've talked a lot about how he does not fit in with where the Bulls are going. Yes, he's still a double-double threat every single game, but his lack of defense, his lack of switchability, especially if you have a backcourt going forward of Coby White and Josh Giddey, it's just that fit is very difficult, right? Now, yeah, he can still get his numbers. When you look at the optimal trying to win, and that's where this Bulls team is. They are trying to put forth the next step to win more games next season, hopefully avoid the play-in, right? Is that you need a big with a different type of makeup. So no real surprise that the Bulls are having Nikola Vucevic out there in the trade block. They are planning on shopping him this offseason. There's not a single person or Bulls fan that should be surprised by that news. But when you pair into that and keep going with the fact that Joe Cowley, and again, take it all with a grain of salt, are also expected to shop Zach Collins this offseason. Now, Zach Collins is a player that in his starts with the Chicago Bulls, over 12 starts, he averaged 14 points, 8.2 rebounds, 2.5 assists, right under stealing a block per game on an efficient 58% shooting from the field, only 29% shooting from three. But we know he is a big that can make threes. He's not necessarily a three-point shooting big. Those are different things, right? Now, so what does that point towards, right? Like, much like with Nikola Vucevic, if the Bulls are open to shopping both big men, right, then to me that indicates even stronger that the Bulls are planning on going after a center in this draft. We'll talk about the list of centers and big men that make sense for the Chicago Bulls, but it means one of two things, right? Either the Bulls are open to pursuing a center in free agency or the trade market, and then they can draft a power forward or small forward to pair next to Modest Buzelis, or vice versa, right? I think both options could be open for the Bulls depending on what they do in the draft. Everything's really going to come down to where the Bulls draft at, right? If they draft a big, then okay. If they end up drafting a power forward or small forward, whatever it is, then I think that points towards maybe they're going to try to acquire a center, whether it's Miles Turner, Mark Williams, something like that. They may try to pursue one of those guys in the offseason. And I think that's what it's all coming down to. But, and people are going to ask, well, okay, why not keep both those guys? And the thought that I have, right, and this is, again, it's kind of unexpected if it's Billy Donovan. If AK understands and realizes there's no way in hell Billy Donovan's going to play multiple bigs. Like, we've seen it, right? We got Zach Collins, and then Jalen Smith fell out of the rotation, right? Like, we had Vooch and Andre Drummond. Drum ended up only averaging like 14 and a half minutes, right? So if you're already, if and I've said this before, and it hasn't really come to pass. So again, maybe this is trying to add logic to front office that has been anything but logical for the majority of their time here. But let's say that this front office realizes, hey, if we're going to draft a big as high up as number 12, we want that big to play. Billy Donovan's not going to play that big if there are two veteran centers on this roster. There's just no way, right? You're not going to see, like with Modest Buzelis, he was already kind of in and out of the rotation, and he was clearly one of the best options we had at power forward after about the first 2 months of the season, right? If you have Zach Collins and a veteran, right, or Jalen Smith, that center that we draft, there's no way in hell they're playing very much at all the rookie year. Now, you don't want to throw them out to the deep end, right? I do think the way that Billy Donovan in a way, had some structured in how he put more on Amadis Buzelis. You're going to want to do that. I mean, even the Miami Heat, right? Like we heard in the offseason after the summer league that they were high on Khalil Ware, but they didn't just throw him into the deep end with young bigs, especially with the foul trouble that they tend to get into. There's a propensity from across the whole NBA, not the Chicago Bulls, to not really throw those guys out there a lot early. Now, for that, you have guys like Zach Edey who buck that trend, right? But for a team that's also trying to win, which is the thing here with the Bulls, you're not going to throw a young center out and play them 25, 28 minutes per game. So, but if the front office is looking at this and saying, but we do want them to play, if they do ride with Jalen Smith and the young big, then maybe that's it, right? Jalen, a player who didn't average a lot of minutes, but could be a player that, maybe they feel like fits more of the athletic profile that they want, and they're willing to take that. Now, he's not the defender, right? He's not a good on-ball defender at all, so that bucks that. Or maybe they're looking at drafting and trading for another center, which could be the option there as well, right? Especially if you're moving both Vuce and Zach Collins in separate deals. So, it's just an intriguing thing, and it points towards what could be in store for the Bulls this offseason. Again, take all these rumors with a grain of salt. It is Joe Cowley. He's been more on than off. I would have to admit here lately, but just take every rumor, and that's not just because of Joe Cowley. That's with everyone. Take all that with a grain of salt. But I do think hearing that both Zach Collins and Nikola Vucevic are on the trade block, that does to me give even more validity that the Bulls are focused on acquiring a center that kind of better fits their mode this upcoming offseason. So I think that's the right thing to do. Now, when you look at it, right, there are a handful of bigs in this draft. When you look at the bigs that are in it, it's Derik Queen, right? I think he's one that's up a high up there for a lot of Chicago Bulls fans. And I think that, him having a block per game, a steal per game, he's active, right? Those type of things. And his thing is more his scoring craft, not necessarily his defense, especially with his height and lack of athleticism in certain places, being a below the rim center. But he's definitely a candidate out there for the Chicago Bulls. Of course, Kaman Malawak, who we've talked a lot about, what he can bring, the center from Duke, 7'2", 250 pounds, a 7'5" wingspan. Like, he brings all of the physicals that you're looking for. The question is that he just hasn't played a whole lot. So, like, his rebounding rate, he has a 19.1% rebounding percentage. But again, he was playing with other players. He does have a 73% true shooting percentage. He put together one of the most efficient big man seasons that you've ever seen in college basketball, even though the stats weren't ridiculous, right? So when you look at it, his standing reach is 1 inch longer than Victor Wembanyama when it comes down to it. And he's 1 inch shorter than Rudy Gobert. Like, so he brings a lot when you come down to the big that can really protect the rim. He projects to be that really, really good. The thing when it comes down to it is that he's definitely a floor raiser on defense, but there's some question on pick and roll defense, pick and roll offense, those type of things, definitely creating for himself, which he's a center. You don't need to do a lot of that when you're a center. So we'll see what happens with that one. But overall, he's definitely one that's on the board here as well. Thomas Sorber, another really good two-way big man that averaged 14.5 points per game, but his defense is probably the thing that you look at for him the most. Averaged 2 blocks per game, almost 2 steals per game as well last year. Had a 16% rebounding rate and a 58% true shooting percentage. So another guy that his defense, that's the thing that really could make him special. There's some is he a legit 6'10"? Is he more 6'9"? He does have the ridiculous wingspan as well, over 7-foot wingspan. So I think he'll be fine there. He also has more of that mobility you're looking for as well. But there's some, as an undersized center prospect, people say and will question how much is the cap on him defensively. And that's what you're looking at when it comes down to him. He's drawn comps like Al Horford, Wendell Carter, those type of centers, not the caliber, but you talk about the skill set. Danny Wolf's another guy that a lot of people have brought up. Asa Newell, right? These are the centers you're really looking for in this draft. Danny Wolf is another guy that you have to bring in part of that. Rasheer Fleming, even though Rasheer Fleming's the Rasheer Fleming position is one of the biggest questions with him. What position he's going to end up playing in the NBA? Is his best position going to end up being center, or can he play power forward, right? That's some of the questions there. But overall, that's really what you're looking at. If the Bulls are truly going after a center with number 12. Now, if they're willing to go for it in the second round, I know people have brought up Rocco and things like that. Like, that's an option there for sure. But I think overall, what the Bulls are looking for, or what it seems like they're looking for, is a new center. Now, like I said, that can come either via the trade market, that can come via the draft. maybe a mixture of both, right? You never know what's going to come down to it. But we shall see. We shall definitely see what the Chicago Bulls end up doing. But it does seem like, and like I said in the episode the other day, it seems like the Chicago Bulls are at a place where they may be more willing to will and deal than before. And people may ask, okay, well, why the Bulls? Like the Bulls who AK already talked about practicing patience, right? Why could they be more active? And maybe that they look at the free agent market in 2026 and they're weighing how likely is it that those guys want to come to the Bulls. We talked about JJJ, right? Jared Jackson Jr. But, not to say that he's a perfect player because he's not, right? But even if you were to bring him over to the Bulls, the Grizzlies have a chance to match. They're not as close to this. They're close to the second tax apron with re-signing him potentially, but maybe not as close to where you're worried about that too much, right? But you really got to look at it. And I think maybe if you look at it overall too, maybe there are more wings in the summer of 2026 to where that makes a little bit more sense for the Bulls. So overall, seems like the Bulls are starting to put together their offseason plan. Well, they're putting together their offseason plan. You'll see how well they execute it. I think two things are really going to dictate a lot of this. A, do they get lottery luck, right? Where do they end up picking, which we're only a week away from the draft lottery. On Monday, Monday night, we'll know exactly where the Bulls are going to be picking in the 2025 draft. So that's an important part. And then how the draft board falls. What position do they go in the draft? Do they go best available? Do they go clearly center? I think these moves are pointing to the center, but we'll see. But that does lead to, all right, so we now know that the Bulls have a mixture of Nikola Vucevic and Zach Collins on the trade block, which I'm sure you can use Javon Carter in there for salary matching if you decide to do that. We've even heard, like Joe Cali wrote in another article, maybe it could be Io. I doubt that. The Bulls have really turned down any calls they've gotten on Io. But when you look at it, Kuminga definitely is one. We've also heard recently that Michael Porter Jr. and Cam Johnson are also players that the Bulls could circle around. Now, Cam Johnson, I think it comes down to are the Nets willing to move him depending on what they do in the draft. Now, if the Nets win the lottery and they get Cooper Flagg, I think Cam Johnson's on his way up out of there, right? I think they're more so looking to prioritize a wing. But, when you look at Michael Porter Jr., the almost $40 million contract turns me off of Michael Porter Jr. Now, Kuminga's probably going to sign upwards of I would love to keep him between 25 and 28 million, but in being fair, you're probably looking at about 30 million, so that's 10 million more. That would definitely take you out of the free agent race in 2026. Still leaves you to be able to re-sign Coby, but you're getting high up there in salary if that's the case. So, those are kind of the wings that some are looking for. Of course, Zion is still a question out there, but I've said it before, I doubt the Bulls are willing to give up the capital. They're going to want first-round picks back for Zion. When you look at the bigs that are available, Mark Williams, we've talked about that. That is a potential guy here that the Bulls could take a look at if they decide to. I do think that's going to take at least a future first, right? As well as a player that's not terrible, right? You're not going to get him. We got a voicemail on that later. We'll get into that. Jabari Smith, but I think they're only going to use Jabari to go after a star. But he is a player that's expected to be out there on the trade market. But then you lead into two players that could be gettable. But then again, Sabonis, right? I think it depends on how the Kings value that. But if they move Sabonis, they're going to want first-round picks. And then Naz Reid. Now, Naz Reid is an interesting option here, right? And the reason why I say that is Naz Reid could get the best of both worlds, meaning that if the Bulls are willing, all right, and again, this comes down to does he sign with the Timberwolves or not? But if you can get Naz Reid, it can give you a player that can play at center for you now, be it a small ball center that can also play power forward next to Matas Buzelis, right? So you're getting that. And then if you also are drafting a center in this year's draft, when that center is ready to take over as a starter, you can naturally shift Naz Reid down to the 4, right? And so I think that Naz Reid is one, if we're talking about free agent options, I know that the Bulls only have $19 million in cap space after re-signing Josh Giddey and their draft pick, but if you're able to move Vooch, if you're able to move Zach Collins and not take back exact matching salary in those, you can get upwards of potentially trying to offer Naz Reid the $25, $26, $28 million, right? Or even if you're willing to work out a sign and trade. I just don't know if we have anything that the Timberwolves would be interested in. But those are really the things that you're looking at for in this Bulls team and saying this could be an option. So if we're talking about options, trade, a mix between sign and trade options, Kuminga, because we've already heard about that, that's a possibility. Mark Williams, again, I think it's a calculated risk. I wouldn't be willing to give up a whole lot for Mark Williams with having 1 year under a rookie scale deal. But when you look at what he did when he was on the court last year, there's some promise there, but there's that huge question if he can stay on the court. And I'm not really apt to trading for players that have huge injury concerns. Minor ones, maybe. Huge ones. And then Naz Reid, right? Naz Reid is the one that I would really be willing to bet on. But then again, depending on how the Minnesota Timberwolves season ends, they're not going to be looking to lose a whole lot. They're going to be looking to add. And I think Naz Reid can be a key part in that as well. So we'll see what happens with that one. But let me know what you guys think on that down below. Now, we've been doing our player grades. We're going to continue that today, looking at Talen Horton-Tucker. Now, this is a weird player because there are oddly Talen Horton-Tucker truthers out there that really don't make any sense to me. I'm just going to be 100% honest with you. Like, Talen is a player that averaged 6.5 points per game. And while he had some games where he did look good, make no mistake about it, those games came via Talen Horton-Tucker being a player that basically had the ball in his hands. And guess what? He's not good enough to play through Talen Horton-Tucker. That's the conundrum of him. He's a player that needs to operate as a high-usage player to get anything good out of him, right? You look at his best season. He averaged 10 points per game on 9 shots per game and 41% shooting from the field, 28% shooting from three. Talen Horton-Tucker is not a good basketball player. He's going to do some things at times, whether it's in garbage time or when he has his moments where there's nobody else putting up buckets. Let's get him a bucket, right? But he's not a good basketball player. Talen Horton-Tucker is not good. And while he had some flashes, I'm going to bear the lead here. It's a D- for me, right? And that's because of, when you look at within his role, back end of the bench player, actually, if we're just talking about just in that role, probably as a back end of the bench player, he's a B-, right? But as a player that you look at as, is he replaceable on your team? Yes, he's easily replaceable on your team. And contrary to what the Talen Horton-Tucker truthers would tell you, he's just not that good of a basketball player. And so, this is the one that you need to create the open roster spot. If we hold on to Talen Horton-Tucker, you don't have an open roster spot. He's gone. He's gone. And I don't know how people are going to react to that with the truthers out there, but he needs to be gone. He doesn't need to be in a Chicago Bulls uniform. So again, D- overall, B- for as a back end of the bench player. That's my grade for THC, Talen Horton-Tucker. All right, let's move on to the voicemails. We got 2 from over the weekend I want to catch up on. This one's from Shay.
Hey, what's up, Haize? It's Shay. Look, man, I'm going to have to say this to a lot of these Bulls fans who want this rumor of Zion Williams and Giannis Antetokounmpo. Look, y'all, I'm going to say this. I know that intrigues y'all. They are having problems with their franchise, and they could possibly there's a good possible chance that they could come to us. But think about it. We've already been through this bullshit with the mid-3. I ain't saying big 3, it's the mid-3. You don't want to rush the process. And on top of that, teams like the Phoenix Suns and all these other teams that y'all thinking gonna end up looking good, the Lakers and all that, they already proven that super team shit, unless you got a good coach that could coach it just ain't gonna work. Look, man. Let's just build through the draft and start a culture from that way. Now look, it's gonna take some time and it's probably gonna take some irritating, some growing pains, but hey, it'll be worth it in the end. I'd rather have that than have what we've been having for the last 4, 5, 6 years. Especially with that DeMar DeRozan, Zach LaVine, Lonzo Ball experiment. Although injuries played a big part in it, still, man, it was still nerve-wracking, and it's nerve-wracking to make the playoffs every single year and get beat by the same exact team. Look, let's just do it the right way, trust the process, and build through the draft. We already got something that we could build with right now, and something that has proven to be successful, especially in the second half of the season. That's to give it a whole season. That's to build with these young guys that we got now. And that star player shit, let's leave it alone for a bit and just clear our minds from that bullshit thought at this point, man, because that ain't really doing nothing for us. And when you look at the teams who are possibly going to be in the finals, my money's on OKC and the Boston Celtics. Look at them. They not no super team like that. They build their team through the draft. Well, and they got And OKC got lucky for getting traded for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. But at the same time, they build through the draft. Excellence is not bought, it is created. Anyway, hey, tell me what you think. Peace.
Zion and Giannis potential moves. Yeah, I understand the desire to star chase from a fan's perspective. You are trying to get in any player that you can feel can help you. But from an organizational standpoint, an asset management standpoint, and first of all, from Giannis ain't coming to Chicago because of what we would have to give up to put forth our best package. He would be coming here and playing with less than he's playing with in Milwaukee. And then as far as Zion, I get it where people say Zion's a calculated risk, right? You could opt out of the contract all the times, but you opting out of that contract doesn't get you your first back. And people have this thought process that they're trying to sell Zion for cheap. They're not. They still want first-round picks back for Zion if they move off for Zion Williamson, as they should. You're not getting Zion for cheap. It's not happening, people. Get over it, right? So I'm with you on those two moves. It's not just about when you go, who you go in for, it's win, right? And the Bulls have gotten bit in the ass before by going in too early, and that's what those moves would mean for the Chicago Bulls, in my personal opinion. But you guys can let me know how you feel down below. Let's get into this next one, man. This one's from Reginald.
Hey, this is Reginald. Just calling, listening to your topic about whether the Bulls will draft side or take a center. And I think the Bulls should do a combination of both trading for a center and drafting a center. I think it takes like a good 3 to 4 years before a center can really come into their own in this league, especially if you're drafting them young. And as for who the Bulls should consider trading for, I think it has to be someone who can run with Josh Giddey. I said a couple of times I really like Daniel Gafford. Also, Mark Williams is a good get. I know you suggested Taylor Terry, Julian Phillips, and first round pick swap, but maybe you can get by with just Lonzo Ball and that first round pick from Portland. Maybe that works, maybe it doesn't. But I was already thinking about moving off of Lonzo for second round pick from Charlotte because they already have the money. They don't actually use the exchange salary back. Yeah, and if I doubt Queen will drop to the 12th spot, and if Mallet's not available, then I definitely would take a look at Sorber. Another thing is the type of big you want. And if you're big who can defend, play with high effort, run the court, and maybe even be above average passer. I don't know if Mark Williams fall into all of those categories, especially his injury history. But that type of center the Bulls need, that type of big thing. I hope that the Bulls stays at the 3. I hope they move Jalen Smith to the 4. After Patrick Williams, the Bulls got to find a way to replace him. I heard when I looked up that Bobby Portis is probably going to opt out of his contract. If there's a way to free up some money, I definitely take a run at him. Like I said, I'm still a big proponent of becoming Trey Jones. If we get Trey Jones and Bobby Portis to come back with a front court of Daniel Gafford, Dallas, and Jalen Smith, if I guess Zach Collins still be there, be a great thing to watch offensively and energy-wise. But go ahead and tell me your opinion. Thanks.
Reginald, I got to say this first, bro. I used your voicemail because it was really topical and it was good, but you got to be closer to your phone or something. Like, I could barely hear you, and then I could boost up the audio, but then because the sound quality isn't good, it sounds like crap. And I'm not calling you crap. Your voicemail is good, but it sounds like, I don't know if you're distracted or whatever. Like, get closer to the phone and try to talk a little bit louder, please, because you do leave really good voicemails, and I don't want to have to pass them up. So just try to clear that up a little bit for me. Help me help you, right? But as far as you're not getting Mark Williams for zone in the Portland pick, you're not getting. And when you look at what the offer, if we're using what they were getting back from the Lakers as kind of the baseline of what they want back for Mark Williams, you're not getting that for Zoe and a Portland pick that's more likely right now to be a second round pick than a first round pick. You're not getting that, in my personal opinion, right? But hey, if the Bulls can swindle that, the Bulls can swindle it. As far as Portis Portis isn't coming back here, man. I don't think that. And keep in mind, like the Bulls, if they make a trade, depending on what they trade, they don't have a lot of space to go after trade market and then trying to be a free agent market. And Portis is probably going to be trying to get paid at least the full mid-level, if not a little bit more than that, which could be a little bit difficult for the Bulls. So, good thinking, right? And I do think you could see maybe a version, an amalgamation of that. But I don't know if those targets are all kind of, it can happen. But we'll end up seeing. But thank you for leaving that voicemail as well, Reggie. That's my time for today, guys. Make sure you guys are following us at Bulls Central Pod. You send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullcentralpod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, but that's thanks to you lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See you ready if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.